Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Monday in the Riv, a sunny day, and the rest of the week's going to be kind of rainy, so let's enjoy it. And in the Riv, and we've got, as usual, we've got a whole bunch of things to talk about, but I got to refer to your weekend flush, which I really didn't have a chance to go over completely because I've been running around like a chicken with my head cut off today. But I've got to really read for everybody who didn't read it, and I will finish it later. Your opening, which is normally a quote. I always close with one. You open with one, so that's quote. Nobody will ever deprive the American people of the right to vote, except the American people themselves, and the only way they could do that is by not voting. Unquote. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That is so true. That is so true. It is incredible. And we've been saying this for 13 years. Get your asses off the damn couch and go vote. Then you complain about government, you complain about everything, and then you find out, you go, did you vote? Oh no, why? What's the use? Well, the use is you can throw these assholes out.
That's right.
If you vote.
And you know what the kicker is? They don't have an excuse anymore because they can get a mail-in ballot now. So if they're too lazy to go to the polls, they can get the ballot delivered to their home, fill it out, and then give it to the mailman.
Yeah, and at the rate we're going, you might be able to get 2 or 3 ballots.
That's right.
So, I mean, with voter fraud, and that one that got busted in Connecticut for ballot stuff, and they had her on videotape. She worked for the mayor, and the mayor gets in again. There's more allegations of it. And guess what? The Democratic DAs and people in it run that town. They've chosen not the prosecutor.
Imagine that.
Not but once, but twice. She was found stuffing ballot boxes. They had her on video, and both times, kind of like Hillary. 33 emails, smash them with a hammer, bleach them. They could burn him at the stake, and nope, I'm sorry, we can't prosecute here. Slick Willie, we don't prosecute. You name it. Joe Biden stores top secret documents in his garage near his Corvette. No, we're not going to prosecute him either. But Trump, well, if you don't like you, we're going to nail you to the wall. So this is, again, getting back to that quote. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of Franklin Roosevelt. I'm a big fan of Teddy Roosevelt, but Franklin got a lot of credit that he didn't deserve. A lot of people worship Franklin Delano Roosevelt, but I'm not one of those people. But he's right about voting. He's right. He was right about voting, and one of the reasons I don't really care for Roosevelt, he's given credit for getting us out of the Depression, but that isn't true. What got us out of the Depression was World War II. World War II got us out of the Depression because during World War II there were no consumer goods being produced in the United States. You couldn't buy a car, 1943 car, you couldn't buy a refrigerator. They rationed gas, they rationed sugar, they rationed everything. We had full employment because everybody was either fighting in the Pacific or in Europe, or working in a war industry, bomb factory, making bombs and bullets, the shipyard. A lot of people in Fall River worked at the shipyard in Newport, building ships for the war. So we had full employment and nobody could spend their money because there was nothing to buy. They weren't producing consumer goods. And then when the war ended, the GIs came back They had money because they couldn't spend it when they were at war. They didn't get paid, not much, but they still get paid. And all these other people who had gotten a pretty good bank account, and they began to spend. And that is what turned around the income. And then because of that, because of all the genius politicians that can't look at things critically, they all said, well, every time we have a problem with inflation or depression or anything like that, we'll get into a war and that'll cure it. But it never did. It had just the opposite effect, because unlike World War II, every other conflict and war we've ever been in since World War II, we didn't stop producing consumer goods. So what happened was it actually increased the inflation, because now you will get nearly full employment every time there's a war, because then it kicks in the war industry, which a lot of people get rich off, and people have money, but we are producing consumer goods. So then they elevate the price because people are now buying those goods in mass. So this little economics lesson was brought to you at no cost, just so you'll actually realize one thing, that most of these politicians, when they discuss anything about saving your money and doing something that's going to help our economy, are all full of shit. And with that, CJ, back to you.
Interesting that you would say that. Right now they're focusing on interest rates dropping, and they're talking about interest rates for a new mortgage being around somewhere around 5.75 by the third quarter of this year, which isn't too far off. So again, we're going to see the inflation up. But the way they're bringing the inflation down is by cranking up the interest rates, because I guess they figured people won't spend money, but it had the opposite effect again. People kept spending money. People are living off their credit cards because they can't make ends meet, because it takes a second mortgage to buy groceries. And this is the distinction that we have from the period surrounding World War II and the Depression and today. Today we have the Federal Reserve, which does everything. If we don't like the inflation rate, we raise the interest rate, because that's going to put a stop on the inflation rate rising. Yeah, it did finally put a stop to the inflation rate rising, but look how high the interest rate had to go. We're going to add another quarter. We're going to add another quarter. Going to add another quarter. Hey, with all the quarters they were adding, I would have had a $10 roll.
Yeah, but you know the irony of it? It didn't have that effect. The only reason that it's working now is because people are broke, as you said. The credit card industry has never seen so much debt, and
Right.
the interest rates up to around 30% on some credit cards. 30%. That's usury, for God's sakes. A reason that the spending is slowing down is because people are out of money. They can't spend. Oh yeah, we raise the interest rates, it's gonna, no. As you said, they began to try to buy at these rates, then they began to try to use their credit cards, and now the entire economy is gonna crash. That's why that the stock market is up, but everybody that's living is living paycheck to paycheck. I just saw a fascinating stat the other day. Do you know that 40% of the people in the country are now saying that they have to skip a meal every day to just pay their rent or their bills? So is that really helping the people? And the inflation rate far exceeds the rate in pay raises, because they say, oh, the minimum wages are going up, this is going up, that's going up. These people have absolutely no idea. That's what they call Keynesian economics. We had a former city councilor who liked to talk about. You remember that discussion we had at breakfast one day with him when I had to explain to him that Keynesian economics talks about government intervention into the economy, which is always a disaster, and it's been proven. That's why nobody ever talks about it anymore. The reality is, government should not intervene in the controlling of an economy. Capitalism, Milton Friedman, was very, very good at that. And like he said, if you give the government the Sahara Desert, they'll run out of sand in 5 years. He didn't trust the government. He trusted the system itself, supply and demand. These people, they're not mad scientists. They're totally insane. But the irony is that when everybody else is getting poor, they're getting rich. I wonder how that happened, huh? Wow. They all managed to get rich. Everybody else in the country is suffering. 2/3 of the country is living paycheck to paycheck. But our developers are doing okay. Our mayor's doing okay. All his rich friends are doing okay. But the regular people aren't. That's the thing. They only look at the tree. They don't look at the forest. They don't care about the regular people. There's no middle class. Oh, great. That's just what we want. We want rich people and poor people. Look at California. They wanted to raise. They had one imbecile out there that wanted to raise the minimum wage to $50 an hour. It's already 20 for some businesses. Oh, by the way, Gavin pulled one of his great ones. He elevated the minimum wage to $20, except for Panera Bread, which is one of his biggest campaign donors. And he put in the law that if you make bread on the premises or something, he had some kind of, that gave them a loophole so they didn't have to elevate their minimum wage. But again, his politicians. Then he probably went to the French Laundry with the president of Panera Bread, had a nice dinner, charged it to the taxpayers, and got a big donation from the guy. This is the way they work. But what happened? What happened in California? They went to $20 an hour. McDonald's laid off about half of their people, and a bunch of other places that had delivery laid off all their delivery drivers because they can't afford it. Small businesses can't afford this stuff. And this
that's
is the
the
problem.
problem. And that's why we see a Big Mac meal going for $19.99 because the minimum wage is going up. And I understand people can't live on a minimum wage, but that doesn't mean we give them a $50 an hour job to flip burgers. It doesn't work that way.
Look, I feel you're right. We feel their pain, but you also have to understand that better to have a crappy job than no job.
Right.
Maybe you can work 2 jobs. It's not fair. And that's why we say it's not fair. So go to the polls, listen to Franklin, go to the polls and vote these people out. And then maybe we'll balance this thing and understand. Remember, while you're trying to get a minimum wage that's affordable, this country has given billions of dollars to Ukraine and every place else in the world, and illegal immigrants live for free. So this is the problem. So you're pissed off? You should be pissed off. You shouldn't. Everybody should be able to make a livable wage. I'm a union guy. I believe in that. But we also understand that small businesses operate on a very narrow margin. They can't afford this kind of stuff. They can't afford this. They can't pass it on to their consumer because they don't make enough. They're small. And small business is the backbone of the country. But this whole thing, and we look at Fall River, look at all the money we spent. Deep Pockets Coogan spent $88 million in opera for. How much did it do for you, the taxpayer? Mattered. Nothing. Oh, the Supreme Court just ruled.
Yes, I posted that earlier. Jeff had said that. Hold on. Here it is.
Good. Oh, thanks, Jeff. I can't read that stuff when I'm...
Breaking news. The Supreme Court rules that Trump cannot be disqualified from the 2024 ballot under the 14th Amendment, which leads me to say something. Okay? And I think this is important. If the Supreme Court has found that Trump cannot be removed for a violation of the 14th Amendment, then how can these other states turn around and say, well, we're going to file federal felony lawsuits against him for intervening in an election? They already found him. They already said that he wasn't guilty of insurrection by this ruling. So if he's not guilty of insurrection, guess what? That's the way it works.
You know, and everybody's going to crucify the Supreme Court
Of
now and
course,
say,
because
well,
he
but why
put
is it?
it
But
all
what they
there.
did was actually read the Constitution.
That's right.
The Constitution, and number one, they found him guilty of insurrection and interpreted it, but you have to be prosecuted and convicted of
That's right.
insurrection. He was never even charged. And states do not have the right to interfere with a federal election.
Correct.
So the whole thing is bogus. See, this is what I love about the Democrats. Because the rules, like Coogan, the rules only apply to everybody else. When he wants to violate the law, he violates the law. When he wants to take a law and use it to gain power, he'll use it. But the Democrats go, you can't do it, but yet they'll file bogus charges, totally unfounded. They will use statutes that were developed during a civil war for Confederates, things that have never been applied before in the history of law, to basically conduct lawfare against a political opponent. And then they're all horrified when the court rules against them. They should all be disbarred. They should all have their law licenses taken away. They know this, that nobody can be that stupid. Even Fannie Willis can't be that stupid. I'm sorry. And I know we got a lot of dumb lawyers. And we can start right here in our own hometown. And we can make a list of them. But I'll tell you what. We always say, I don't know if they give the bar in crayon, but these people, I think the Democrats take it with, we connect the dots in the pictures. I don't even know if they can read, some of these people that are lawyers, because these charges, they're using it to attack a political opponent. It's got nothing to do with justice. This is bullshit. And it is bullshit, and now you'll turn on, all you Democrats turn on CNN and watch the pity party. The Supreme Court, the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court. They're biased. Well, yeah. You know, I don't like some rulings that came out of there, but geez, I mean, that constitutional thing, the 14th Amendment was so clear. I mean, a second grader could read that and know they were full of crap. That with all of these cases. The best one was the one in Maine. She's not even elected. She just unilaterally, said, well, I think Trump is, and I'm taking him off the ballot. I don't like him. I'm going to take him off. And the other people run on, no, I'm not going to be a good attorney general. I'm just going to sue Trump's ass off, just to piss him off and try to break him financially. That's not why you run for office. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Letitia. You can't. They should throw you out of office. I'm sure that the Constitution of New York State must say that you represent the people, because we all know that even the states say that the government is of the people, by the people, and for the people, and that you represent the people. You can't run for office saying, I don't give a damn what the people want. I'm just going to go after one of my party's political opponents. That's wrong. And whether you like them or not. I would be bitching if they did that to a Democrat. I'm pissed off they won't put Robert Kennedy on the ballot. To me, he's a viable candidate. And he's a Democrat. Well, he's not a Democrat anymore, but I mean, you got Democrats. They won't even put them in the primaries. They refuse to put anybody on there but Biden. Fundamentally. That's representing your own party, your people. They told Bernie Sullivan, we don't care if the people are gonna nominate you. We're gonna overturn you at the convention. These people don't care about justice, and they don't care about the Constitution. And I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm an independent. But I am an I am a constitutionalist. I believe in this country and I believe in the Constitution. And that's it. I don't care. And as I'll close with this and turn it over to you, CJ, because I'm on a rant, because this really pisses me off. But I'll tell you what. I will go back to one of my favorites by a man who I disagreed with a lot of things with at first, but he came around after he went to Mecca. Malcolm X. Because Malcolm X was a black separatist, a black militant, and then he went to Mecca and said, I saw blue-eyed, blonde-haired Muslims, and I realized it's not the color of people's skin. And what did they do? They assassinated him. Because he became, actually, he understood that it's about the person. But he said, to me, one of the greatest quotes I've ever heard from a man who I totally disagreed with on a lot of issues. He said, I am for the truth, no matter who tells it. And I'm for justice, no matter who it's for. And with that, CJ, back to you.
And by the way, that was Bernie Sanders, not Bernie Sullivan.
I'm sorry. I apologize. You made a full body. Say I had a flashback to a political tick. We were talking about political ticks, so I went to Bernie Sullivan. That's right, Bernie Sanders. Okay.
An old Fall River Herald News guy, that's for sure, and other political affiliations that we know of. But no, it's definitely very interesting. I want to thank you, Jeff, for bringing that up, and that's why I left that up on the screen for a while about the Supreme Court ruling. I think that was important, and again, I still believe that he wasn't charged with insurrection. He wasn't convicted of insurrection. Therefore, you can't use insurrection as a mode to keep him off the ballot. And that's what the Supreme Court said. And I don't care if you say the Supreme Court Trump stacked the Supreme Court. He put all his people in there. Every president gets the opportunity to stack the courts. They make the nominations for who's going to become a federal judge. And they make the nominations for who the Supreme Court justice is going to be. The only reason why RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, stayed on through the Trump administration was she did not want to retire during the Trump administration to give him the opportunity to appoint somebody who would appoint a Republican, a conservative Republican. And that's why she had to die in office. And she did. She died in office, which is a shame that she died in office. But that's what gave you try to make a point, and sometimes it backfires. And that's what happens with people. So
No, you're right. And the irony of it is that they read one of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's opinions, which basically said you can't deny people their fundamental rights, and it was something that actually worked for somebody who she was an opponent of. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a justice, and obviously she was more liberal justice, but on some major issues, her opinions, stayed with the Constitution. So that's the reality. As like I said, Betty McMahon, I'm for justice no matter who it's for, and that's the problem. Judges, and law enforcement should be nonpartisan. You cannot use your power. That power is too immense to be politicized, and that's the problem in the United States. They have weaponized the DOJ, the FBI, their liberal judges that are just making ridiculous rulings that they know won't be upheld in the Supreme Court, because they know all they wanted to do was poison the well before the election. They know that ultimately, when these cases all get up to the higher courts, they're going to get thrown out because they're absurd. And all the whining and all the crying and all the lying on CNN and MSNBC are not going to take away from the fact that these cases are pure political retribution.
Do you know why we don't elect judges in Massachusetts? I had this conversation with several attorneys. We don't elect judges in Massachusetts because they would be too strict with enforcement of the law. They would be handing out sentences right and left for the violations of the law. Imagine that. Imagine that. Enforcement of the law. Maybe we should go to elected judges. Then that stops the political bullshit. It works in other states. Why wouldn't it work here? I want to know. Are you there, Chip?
Yeah, well, look, I would rather have elected judges too, because although it's not a perfect system, there's nothing perfect, we know that. If you get ultra liberal areas, they will elect ultra liberal judges who will be ultra easy. But then again, there are other areas in the country who are like stuck like an isolated island in a state like California, and you have some areas where people really want law and order, and they may get pissed off enough to elect the judge and say, listen, put these people in jail.
That's right.
And they are more prone. As a matter of fact, that one down on the Fannie Willis case, they were saying he was tiptoeing around the thing because he didn't want to throw her under the bus in Georgia, and antagonize her voting base because he's up for re-election in 4 months. So let's see what happens there. So it's not a perfect system, but you know why it's better? It's a near perfect system, because whether you like it or not, we get to one fundamental thing. Who decides who the judges are? The people. And we get back to, if you don't agree, vote. The majority rules in this country. At least it will not be the politicians putting the judges in. The people will put them in. That's why it will never happen in Massachusetts, because in this toilet, you will never, ever see the power vested in the people where it's supposed to be.
It's a shame, though. It really is. Tomorrow is Super Tuesday. So remember, people, as we opened up with this show, the only people that can take away your right to vote is you. So make sure you get your button gear and you get to your polls. I know Ryan has screwed it all up and changed your polling places. Poor Chip can't go back to where he's voted for I don't know how many years. He's now going to go up to St. Anthony of the Desert Church. That was done purposely just for you.
Well, I was baptized in that church, and and I went to that church when I was growing up, but no, I think that was an outrage. That changing these polls around is it makes the issue more confusing for people. I don't like this. People have been voting there. I never heard a complaint in all the years we've been dealing with politics, which is a very long time. I never heard anybody complaining about going to the polls, because people are like, they're like gerbils like me. I use the same route a lot to go to places unless there's construction, and everybody's used to it. I've been going to that polling place for as long as I've basically been living here, which is my entire life. So now I've got to. Of course, somebody will say, "Well, you're complaining because it's right on the corner where your house is." So it's on the same block,
right?
but that's just a coincidence. But I've polled, close to my house, and this thing just causes a lot of conflict. It almost looks like it's intentional by people just to screw this thing up, and I know. He gave himself a lot of titles: director, grand poobah of the whatever. The stationery reads like a resume for a job.
Yes, it does.
But I'm not in favor of it. But I may not vote tomorrow. I don't know. I'm mulling it because I'm kind of torn. I'll be perfectly truthful. I'm almost torn to go to the Democrat elect and just put in write in Donald Duck or something like that, just so I don't give Biden a vote, or write in Robert Kennedy. But then I'm also tempted to go and vote in the Republican primary just to
There you
say
go.
we need somebody. So this is one of the reasons that I don't normally vote in primaries unless there's a really, really, a candidate I really want to see to be pushed to the edge and they're in a real good election. I will. I always vote in the finals, but tomorrow it's kind of like I'm like Solomon. I got to cut the baby in half. I want to vote in both of them because I want to vote. I want to vote for. I think, like I said, I think Robert Kennedy is a very viable candidate.
I think so
And
too. I think so
it's a
too.
shame what they're doing to him. And he was a Democrat. Matter of fact, his family is one of the premier Democratic families, in a history of Democratic politics. I mean, you look at them, and who else has been there? I mean, you got the Bushes on the Republican side, you got the Kennedys, where his entire family were political heavyweights.
And I
And I,
believe that that's the reason why the Democrats did not want him on the ballot, because the name Kennedy still carries a lot of weight.
and plus, he's a moderate.
Yes.
He's not like a left wing nut. We got right wing nuts and left wing nuts. And that's who's running the show now in some of these places. And we can't, and that's the problem. And I think Kennedy, if you listen to him, he doesn't get a lot of airtime. And ironically enough, it's the Fox station that puts Kennedy on most of the time.
Isn't that
But you
interesting?
listen to him speak, go on his website. I mean, a guy makes a lot of sense. And this is the thing that upsets me. And we get back to the other political heavyweight, Franklin. Go to vote. The moral of this story is go and vote.
I agree, no question about it. Well, I want to thank you all for watching. Thank you for the comment of a great show, Mr. X. As always, you're a wonderful viewer and a wonderful contributor. And I want to thank you all for watching. Remember, get out and vote tomorrow. It's important that you go out and vote. Cast your ballot. And remember, every vote counts. Your vote counts just like everyone else's. Have a great day. And remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold those politicians accountable. Have a good one.